Kia ora everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Renee. I like to read books and then talk about them on the internet. And today I'm going to answer some questions that you sent me in. Yeah, we hit 2K on this little channel, and I asked you guys on Instagram if you would like to ask me some questions, and you delivered. We've got quite a few in here. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. It makes me feel really special and loved, and like I get to talk about myself for 40 questions. Yeah, there's quite a few. I realized that last year I might have set the bar a bit high with the introduction for these Q&As. If you haven't seen my 1K Q&A, you can go watch that. It's pretty iconic, to be honest. And I thought, maybe I have to do something this year, but it's not in the budget. The budget being my time and energy and effort currently. So we're gonna opt for Mars, just sleeping in my lap, and hopefully that is enough of a draw card for people other than me. I saw Nathan do this with his Q&A and I was like, that's such a good idea, because then it's like a little surprise. Obviously I know what the questions are, I've read them, I had to write them down on all these little bits of paper, but I won't know which one I'm pulling out. So it'll be as random as it can possibly be. I feel like I have tiny bits of fluff all over my face that are itching my face. I will try not to itch my face too much, but it's not my fault if I do. Okay, let's just get into the questions. Obviously there's a lot, so I'm going to try and go really fast because I don't want this to be super long. Right. Are there any types of videos you'd like the pretext to make because of audience demand? I don't know why, but the first kind of types of videos that pop into my head are those I read like a celebrity reading vlogs, and I do not want to do those. I know they're really popular, but it just kind of seems boring to read a celebrity's recommendations or reading list. I think if I was going to read anyone's reading list, it would be like a favourite author or someone whose work I really enjoy. That would be much more interesting. So yeah, no. Where do you get your books from? Bookshops, online, in person. I love to peruse a good used bookshop, independent bookshop. Yeah, I think probably mostly in person. I used to buy a lot of books from book fairs, but it's just started raining really hard. That has recently changed because I've been going to fewer, but yeah, mostly in person. Do you manage to read during the work week? I try to, yeah, I really do try to. I try to prioritize reading whenever I can. So yeah, definitely during the work week, we try to read. Oh, one of them just fell into my cup of tea. Oh my God, I better pull that one out. Okay, the soggy tea question is, oh my God. Where would you like to travel to someday? Japan is a place that I would really like to go to very soon. Favorite read of 2023 so far? How to Loiter in a Turf War by Coco. I made a whole reading blog about that. If you want to know more, it's really good. New Zealand, Māori Pacific writer, set in Auckland, super fun, super important. Just had the best time reading that book. What books have changed the way you perceive / maneuver the world? I don't know if there's anything that I can think of that's changed the way I perceive or maneuver through the world. Maybe like the Argonauts by Maggie. That wasn't an easy read for me, and it kind of brought up a lot of interesting questions for myself as a reader it was also like very informative, particularly around like gender politics that book was dealing with. But yeah, that's the only thing I can think of at the top of my head. Yeah, that's my answer. The Argonauts by Maggie. What's your process when reviewing a book? I enjoy hearing you talk about books. Ah, thank you. I don't really have like a set process. I really try to not just give a synopsis of a book. I think that the most interesting thing that I can do when talking about a book is offer my own perspective, because that's obviously going to be different to everyone else, but also, yeah, try to think of something, if I know it's like a popular book that has been widely talked about, if I can offer something that's a little bit different, a different perspective, a different thought, even just something tiny, because I don't want to just be regurgitating a lot of the same things that are already out there that other people might have said brilliantly, you know. Now, are there books or genres you'd like the pretext to have to read because of audience demand? Genres. Again, no. I feel like I've tried to be open-minded about genres that I don't necessarily always read, but it's never been for audience demand or like making things that I think will be popular. Yeah, that's not my jam. I'm quite happy just doing my thing in my little corner over here, and I'm pretty sure you guys like it. I don't think I've ever felt a pressure to like perform for you guys in a way that doesn't feel genuine. What meal is sure to make you smile? Like a massive big bowl of just like fresh pasta with a nice sauce and lots of fresh Parmigiano, a dozen freshly shucked oysters with a nice mignonette or like some fresh lemon and a nice glass of bubbles. That as a meal, like a starter and a meal, perfect. I would eat that every day and it would make me smile. One author you think everyone should pick up? Toni Morrison. Everyone should read and pick up Toni Morrison, I think. Anyone who's read her will agree. What is your workday like? It can be varied depending on what work we've got going on. I guess what I do in my job is quite varied. It can be anything from sitting at a desk all day just like answering emails, fielding submissions for artists, curating a new collection, curating the gallery. If we're doing any kind of like product launch, a lot of the marketing around that, often product creation. If we're creating something in-house, I'm generally a part of that process in some way. Some days I work in the gallery, which is nice to kind of change things up and be a bit more customer facing. Photography, content creation, doing a lot of that lately. Yeah, it can be quite varied, but also it can be very same week to week. But at the moment, a lot of content creation as I'm trying to give myself some buffer. Drop the Astro Big Three. Aries, Sun, Aries rising, Capricorn moon. Very much that bitch. What are your top karaoke songs? I don't do karaoke a lot because I have a terrible singing voice and I'm quite self-conscious about it, and I get super embarrassed. But if I was to do karaoke, it would probably be something quite ballady or like an R&B slow jam. Trying to think. Maybe like Whitney Houston's I Have Nothing, or Always Be My Baby by Mariah Carey. That's a good one, although she's quite hard to sing. Something like that. Yeah. always been a little curious about why you deleted your last book-focused account. So I used to have a Bookstagram account solely dedicated to books. It was called So I Read This Book, and it's how I kind of found YouTube, BookTube, and got into that. Yeah, I think had it for like a year and a half. Just kind of felt like it wasn't really, I was starting to feel like a little bit performative on it, and it was a bit of a time suck that I wasn't really getting a lot of fulfillment out of. We also just got Mars. He was like a puppy, and I just realized that I didn't have the time to be dedicating to something like that in the way that I like to. I'm an all or nothing person, and I can never just be like half in something. So it was easier to make the decision to be like, I don't want to do this anymore, and if I want to talk about books, I can do it on YouTube, or I can still do it on my personal account, which is what I've been doing. And yeah, I think previously I'd kind of thought that I needed to separate my hobbies from my personal life, but someone said something one day and kind of made me realize that like those things are a part of me and I shouldn't have to separate them if I don't want to. So yeah, I just don't have a dedicated book account anymore, but I still talk about books online. So it feels just right for me. How did you and the boo meet? We met on Tinder. We met online. We met in my hometown. I had kind of seen Rupert around a bit and was always kind of interested. He looked really cool and interesting, and I knew he wasn't from around, like from there. Where I'm from is quite small. And yeah, then I saw him pop up on Tinder and I thought, it's the guy, that guy. The rest is history, as they say. We were kind of dated a little bit, friends, and then we got together and then moved to Auckland. That's our story. We've been together for like coming up 6 years next week, actually. Favorite snacks and beverages. Favorite snacks, definitely just like a good old plain bowl of potato chips and a nice dip. Lately I've been really enjoying like just sliced up pieces of apple. It's a great little snack. I like to make myself like a lazy cheese board, which is just, my version is a few loose crackers, some cut up brie cheese, and the sliced apple, and that's my go-to snack at the moment. Go-to beverage is, or favourite beverage, always a good cup of tea. Yorkshire Gold is my favourite. A nice glass of champagne, really dry. What else? I've been maybe sucked into the Diet Coke culture and have been drinking a lot of that lately, which I have been kind of enjoying. I don't know if I'm fully sold yet. It's kind of nice to have something a little less sugary, but also it leaves a weird aftertaste. If you could travel anywhere in the world to go book shopping, where would you want to visit? Rupert told me that there are whole suburbs in Tokyo dedicated to just books, like bookshops, secondhand bookshops. I want to go there. I don't know if they're all English language bookshops, but I just think as a concept, a suburb full of just like streets lined with secondhand bookshops sounds like heaven. Advice you would give to someone that wants to work in the art market field? Like, relationships are key, I would say, no matter where you are, if you're at like uni or if you're in a workplace, make the effort to like meet people. That's a hard thing to do, especially coming from someone who is extremely introverted and does not love meeting new people. Those key relationships that you kind of make are always going to come in handy at some point, and people will remember you if you introduce yourself to them and if you make an effort to say hello to them the next time you see them. I think that's important as well, and it's kind of easy. It's kind of an easy piece of advice. Favorite thing about NZ? My favourite thing about Aotearoa is being Māori and the Māori culture. Yeah, I think that is what makes us special and unique, and it's my favourite thing. What's your job? My job is I'm a marketing manager and curator for an art gallery, if you haven't already noticed by a few of the questions that I've already answered. Have you ever pretended to like a book more than you actually did? I did with A Little Life. I'm just trying to think what I thought about A Little Life. I read that book before I was online. I don't remember having to like fake my response to that book. I didn't love it, but I don't think so. I feel like I'm pretty honest with books, even ones that I know people love or are like, yeah, well loved, but I do this thing where I will give a book a review or a star rating on Storygraph, and sometimes I like go back and just change it, not because I want to like trick anyone, but I think when there's like a little bit of distance between when you've read a book and you actually have time to think about it, those numbers kind of change sometimes. Sometimes I lower them, sometimes I give them a higher rating. I think it also like changes the more you read as well, because your idea of like what a 5-star book, book is gonna continually change the more you read and the more you... If you could go back in time, 3 things you would tell your 16-year-old self. Don't change high schools, it's totally not worth it. Don't take yourself too seriously, and I don't know, my 16-year-old self, what would I say to 16-year-old Renee? Probably like learn how to drive sooner, because it'll come in handy. Any exciting vacation plans? We are going to Sydney in a few weeks, and I'm excited about that. I get to see my family. Rupert and I haven't been on a holiday in a long time, and I get to meet my friend Sophie, who I talk about a lot on here. She lives in Sydney, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing her. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Just gonna eat, see lots of art, do some shopping, meet my friend, buy some books probably. Any recommendations for Sydney bookstores must visit? Let me know in the comments, please. Favorite artist / art movement? I don't know if I have a favorite artist. At the moment, I'm really loving Alice Neil's paintings. So captivating and so fun to look at, and I'm having a good time with those. Yeah, if I like maybe an artist that I have always enjoyed since art school is Sarah Hughes. She's a New Zealand artist. She creates a lot of really bright, tessellating, colourful installations. A lot of public artwork as well, which I've always loved. Art movement. I mean, to say the contemporary art movement is kind of boring because it's so broad, but I think when I think of art movements, I think one of the more important ones when I remember back to art school was the Dada movement. I think that changed a lot of the perception of what art can be and really played with that idea in some quite groundbreaking ways at the time. It's obviously fed into a lot of contemporary art and all the other art movements to come after that. So yeah, it's my favourite art movement. Do you like to eat / drink while reading? Absolutely. I like to snack while reading. I don't like to eat a meal because you usually have to use both hands for that. So I prefer a little snack, something that I can one-hander. And yeah, always have like a tea or a beverage or something while I'm reading. Water, if I'm feeling crazy. A little glass of wine is also nice, or a cocktail. Best summer read rec. Best summer read rec, I think, is the Neapolitan Quartet by Elena Ferrante. Those books are so good and should be read at summertime, I think. That's what I did, and I think it was perfect. Perfectly paired. Your daily reading routine. I like to try to read during the week, like on my lunch break. That doesn't always happen though, because sometimes I get distracted by other things. On weeknights, I like to read before I go to sleep, so in bed. And then on the weekends, just whenever I can. In the morning, because I really like to lie in, so I'll try to read for a bit then. Depending on how much I have to do that weekend, sometimes it doesn't happen until the evening or like the late afternoon, but I'm definitely a person that can only sit down to read once I know that like all my other jobs have been done. It's like a little reward for myself when I do all my chores. You're in a car with your best friends after a long night out. What song do you play? Say we would probably listen to something by like Mariah Carey, Prince, or Janet Jackson. Any one of those three. What's a song you know the lyrics by heart? California Love by Tupac is the first thing that comes to mind. That's the Way Love Goes by Janet Jackson. A lot of Janet Jackson actually. The Week by SWV. Don't Let Go by In Vogue. These are like the most random songs. Shoop by Salt and Pepper. I am very much into like 90s R&B hip hop. It's what I grew up with, so I know a lot of that stuff. And it's always just so much fun. There's so much drama to it. It tells a story. Love it. Something you miss and don't miss from your 20s. Something I miss from my 20s is being able to live on a smaller wage. Don't know how I did it, but I did. It's very impressive. Something I don't miss from my 20s, probably the same thing, like not being paid what you deserve even though you're young, or like the assumption that young people will work for less because they're young, and so you just kind of have to make it work. Proper remunerations are necessary for all ages, especially if you have good skills that are worth something. Are there any books you recommend that you've connected with deeply? Too Much and Not the Mood by Durga Chew-Bose. That book, reading it, some parts of it felt like they were written specifically for me. I connected to it so hard. Yeah. Loved it. Desperately need more by Durga, like now. Please, now would be a good time to have some life advice from her. Favourite fictional character? Just looking at some of the books that I've read this year. Oh, yeah, probably Lucy from Jamaica Kincaid's Lucy. She was definitely my favourite character that I've read recently. And probably ever. Just such a good, well-rounded, like fully fleshed out character. And so young. I wish I would have been that assertive when I was 19. If you wrote a book about your life, what would the title be? Just looking at like the stack of books in front of me, and I'm like, those are all really great titles for books. Probably So I Read This Book. I am actually really proud of that as a username. When I was coming up with it for my Bookstagram, I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm quite proud of of coming up with that name and how much I've enjoyed it and still use it obviously in my YouTube. Yeah, we'll call it So I Read This Book. Favourite bookstore, online or in person? Favourite, there's too many. Favourite online bookstore, Bookity Book Books. She's like a one-woman band, Mandy. I think maybe her partner helps her with like the photography, but she does most of it herself. And she is based in Wanaka. Yeah, she's just got one of the tightest, clearest like brand identities. It's fun, it's bright, it's colourful, it's made reading, I think, a fun thing for a lot of people in New Zealand, and it was definitely needed and came at the exact right time. In person, I love Unity Books in the city. I love Lamplight Books in Parnell. Those are both independent bookshops, beautiful. I love secondhand bookshops, Dominion books, hard to find, Jason's, that's all I can think of. Oh, and the women's bookshop in Ponsonby, love that bookshop as well. That's an independent bookshop. Things you do to avoid a reading slump. I mean, I don't know if I can do anything to avoid a reading slump. It kind of just happens, doesn't it? That's not what you want to know. I would say if you find yourself in a reading slump, to get out of it, my advice would be to pick up something that is by an author that you know that you really love. So for me, it's like Rachel Cusk or Ferrante or something like that. Or read lots of tiny books. Tiny books feel like you're accomplishing a lot and can give you kind of a momentum to pick up something quicker. So those are the things that I would recommend. Or just like let it happen. You probably need it, and sometimes it can be nice to just like slow down your reading or let it go. What were some fave books you read as an adolescent? I don't know about favorite books, but the only books that are kind of coming to mind are the Tomorrow When the War Began series. I don't know if anyone read those, probably. They're like YA, I don't even know what you would call them, adventure series. It's like a group of teenagers in Australia go and camp in the outback for a weekend, and while they're there, their hometown is like invaded by some foreign military, and they don't know what's happening until they get back, and like it's crazy, it's wild. I don't think I finished the series, but I remember reading like the first 3 books at least, and it kind of had like romance between the characters and it was exciting. I remember it being a bit racist though. That's all I can think of. I wouldn't say that they were my favorite, but those are the most memorable books of my adolescence. Where are some places you've traveled that you've loved? I have sadly not traveled a lot. I haven't been anywhere in Europe. It's hard when you live like literally at the bottom of the world. Everything is so expensive. But I have traveled a bit through Southeast Asia, and I think my favourite is probably Thailand. We went to Thailand for like 10 days to go to a friend's wedding, which was really fun and exciting. It was like a traditional Thai wedding that was like 6 hours long and then like partied into the night. There were like 400 people there. It was, yeah, a really fun experience, and I would love to go back because we were in the northern part of Thailand mostly. Yeah, I would like to travel to like some of the south and go to some of the really nice beaches in Thailand. What's in store for the future of independent bookshops? As someone who does not work as a bookseller, so doesn't know the current status of it or whether there is, I guess people are afraid of Amazon, right? Coming to New Zealand and that kind of stuff. For me, I think independent bookshops always are going to be an important part of like community around reading. People who love reading love to do it in community and love to be able to talk to people about books. People often think reading is like a very isolated, selfish activity, but I find that a lot of readers are looking for people to be able to discuss these things with, and for those people who aren't online like I am and many of my friends are, independent bookshops are that. That people love to go to bookshops and chat with booksellers and get recommendations, and those are things that you're never going to get from those big box retailers or online. I really hope that people will continue to value that and always choose to shop with independent bookstores. Yeah, that's my kind of ill-informed opinion, thoughts. How do you make sure you have time to read without life getting in the way? Sometimes life does get in the way, and I recently have not had a lot of time for reading and have finished like 1 book this month so far. Yeah, I guess like I always make time for reading. I always prioritize it over everything, but sometimes life gets busy and there are things you have to do, or there are things that are kind of preoccupying your brain, and reading just isn't possible for whatever reason. But when I can, I always just think I would rather be reading than watching a TV show, or I don't know, sometimes I prefer to just like zone out and watch TV, or I don't know if I answered that question very well. Favorite reading spot, time, snacks. A lot of questions about snacks today. Favorite reading spot, either this couch or my bed. Those are like the two main places that I read. Time, like I said before, in the evening after everything is done, I can proper fully relax and switch off. Snacks, as mentioned before, always a cup of tea, some nice little apple, some nice cheese, a couple of crackers, maybe a little something sweet, a little gummy lolly. That's always a winner. Okay, last question. What is it gonna be? Advice for someone who doesn't really want a dog, but their kid is desperate for a dog. Well, as someone who has a dog and really wanted a dog, I would say only get a dog if you really want one, because they're a lot of responsibility, and I guess if your kids are responsible, your kid is responsible, then it could be a good way of like giving them that. But if they're not and you have to be the one to end up taking care of it, that's hard, especially if you don't really want it in the first place, and that's not fair on the dog. So my advice would be, don't get a dog. If your kid really wants a dog and like there's no, because it's sad when you see dogs that are like bought and then families just can't take care of them because it's more than they anticipated. Like that happens a lot, and I think it's just really important that if you are going to get a dog, you make sure that it's something that you want, something that you have time for, something you're prepared for all the responsibility. Do your research. We did a lot of research about Mars's breed and knew that that's what we wanted. We had friends who have spoodles and kind of knew what to expect mostly. Yeah, and knew that he was going to fit into our lifestyle rather than us having to completely change our lifestyle to fit him. That's kind of my long-winded answer of advice for getting a dog. And on that note, look at him, look at his cute little face, look at him. Oh my gosh, he's so cute, aren't you? I know you just want to look at me, but look at the camera. You're so cute, little face, little teddy bear face. Yeah, okay, that's everything. That's all the questions. This is a long one. I should have said grab a drink or prepare yourself, but I'm sure you did that already. Thank you again for everyone who asked a question, and cheers to 2K. Okay, bye.